And I think it's important to ask yourself the question, are you really the right person to do it? Just because you always have, because maybe it was a necessity to get you to where you are today.
The world is full of resources designed to get you unstuck. And sometimes the key to leveling up isn't about doing more, but doing the right things more effectively. Hi, my name is Nick Brightbill. I'm a partner and financial advisor here at Hershey Financial Advisors. I've spent nearly 2 decades helping business owners, executives, and families translate complexity into clarity and leading them toward a better way of living and managing wealth. Today, we're diving into what it really means to scale professionally, personally, and financially. And I'm joined by someone who brings deep experience and fresh perspective to this conversation. Joining me today is Stephanie Zafarana, a coach and consultant who has helped hundreds of business owners take their next big leap. Stephanie brings a rare blend of financial insight and strategic market expertise to the table. Stephanie has worked in the financial services industry in roles ranging from client associate to financial advisor to technology specialist. And today, she is a successful entrepreneur running a marketing company with her husband and coaching growth-minded professionals. She is an associate certified coach through the International Coaching Federation. She holds a Bachelor's of Science in Finance and International Business from Central Michigan University and an MBA from Wayne State University. Her approach is rooted in helping individuals and organizations use their resources efficiently to achieve specific, meaningful goals. Hi, Stephanie. It's great to have you here today. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me. This is really fun.
This is fun. Yeah, I've known you, what now, for I think 8 months? We've been working together roughly?
At least.
Right.
Time flies.
Yeah, sure does. So I've appreciated our time together, which is why we're here today. And I want to walk through just some questions I have and really want to hear your response to those questions based on your multi-decades of experience in this line of work. So one of the things we emphasize with our clients is intentionality, using your time, capital, and energy wisely. So Stephanie, you've worked with many high-performing individuals and companies. From your vantage point, what are, say, the top 3 challenges that business owners generating $5 million or more in revenue or a C-suite exec earning $200,000 plus a year tend to face when trying to scale or lead more effectively? So with that, so that could be things like, is it talent management? Is it delegation and leadership structure? Strategic decision fatigue, which is a real thing, or simply not having time to work on the business rather than in the business?
It's a great question, Nick. And I think that there were 4 interesting points that are relatively interconnected. One of the things I hear most frequently is I can't find talented people, or I'm not getting the most out of I don't think I'm getting the most out of my people. And I fully believe that you need to hire based on kind of 2 criteria. You need to hire in skills. They might not have the knowledge of your industry, but they should have the skills you're looking for. And what I mean by that is, are they organized? Are they task driven? Do they have, whatever the position you're filling is, do they have the natural skills and inclination to be able to complete the job? I'm a firm believer you can train them on your industry, but do they have the skills that you're looking for to fill that specific position? And the second, and equally as important, filter is fit. Are they a cultural fit? It is shocking to me how many conversations I have with folks that say, I have this great person. They get things done, everything's accurate and delivered on time, but they don't necessarily work well with the team. And so it becomes a really toxic work environment very quickly. And so it's important to really to filter for both of those equally. One is not more weighted than the other. And then for me, delegation is oftentimes what I see. Entrepreneurs, executives, they get really frustrated when things aren't done. Maybe they're not done perfectly. Maybe they're not done exactly how they think they should be done. And really, it's about focusing on the outcome. Was it delivered on time? Was the client, either internal or external, happy with the result? And so I think that's important. And that's the only way you're going to scale. You can't continue to do it all yourself.
Right. So with that on delegation, I've noticed that with myself and other professionals where it can be really challenging. Do you have any short stories about kind of a executive or owner success in switching from I'm a terrible delegator to just mastering getting off their plate what they shouldn't be doing?
Sure. I can use, I think a very personal story for me is as we're scaling our marketing company, and, we went from 3 employees. Now we have 9 employees in about 18 months. And one of the key people that we hired most recently is an internal salesperson. So what does that mean? They're really, once our main rainmaker, which happens to be my partner and my husband. So he brings in an account, a totally new company for us to serve. His now internal salesperson can really help ask for referrals, get a lot of projects uncovered, underway. She starts to work. So what does that allow him to do? It allows him to be a rainmaker for more large companies, but it also allows him to walk away and have a vacation and not worry about, we have 0 sales for, our entire vacation, or I'm going to work in the morning and then I'll vacation in the afternoon. It's very freeing. But we both had to be willing to let some things go. Like, she does things differently, doesn't make it wrong, but it is different. And you've got to be okay with that.
Yeah, you've got to be able to handle those adjustments well. It's I think I've learned before, if it's not 100% you, if it's done 80% of how you would have done it, that should be good enough, because you can now get yourself onto other things.
I've heard that as well, and I'm a big believer.
And it probably depends on your personality too, right? I mean, if you're a perfectionist, that's probably extremely hard, and there's bigger hurdles maybe for you to personally overcome before that becomes something that you can excel in.
Yeah, and I think it's important to ask yourself the question of, are you really the right person to do it? Just because you always have, because maybe it was a necessity to get you to where you are today before you could really afford to hire all the people to support you. Just because that's how you're doing it, is it really the right way, or should it be evolving anyways to better serve your clients? Because what the clients are expecting, internal and external, continues to evolve as well.
That's good. That's great. Which one do you find yourself addressing repeatedly with your clients? What patterns have you seen in how successful leaders regain focus when they're overwhelmed by operational noise?
Mm-hmm. I think, Dan Sullivan is probably the most well-known kind of entrepreneur coach in the country, maybe, outside of our borders, but we'll stick within, the US borders to say he's probably one of the most well-known. And he is a very important lesson around, focus and buffer days. And I truly believe that it is a huge, important piece to the puzzle. So you have to give yourself a day to work on strategic initiatives, being a leader, you have to give yourself space to think and be creative, and you can't do it if 5 days a week you're visiting clients or putting out fires. So I think that's the piece that continually people, and listen, I'll be the first to admit my Fridays, I try to make those my buffer days where I do have time to be creative and think and get, and really look at some of those higher important, visionary type of activities. But it's also the first day where if I want to, have a meeting with someone, I'll slip one in there. And so recommitting to that becomes really important. And I find that, that translates to pretty much everyone I work with is they're always recommitting to their creativity day.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, looking at focus and buffer days, I've gotten caught in that kind of cycle myself where I have so many days where I'm focused and I'm on at stuff, but then things that come in those buffer times, more detailed responses, deeper work, the visionary type of things tend to get pushed aside. And before you know it, you're running down maybe a rabbit trail that you think is a good and healthy rabbit trail, but it's leading to a place of frustration without that balance.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think it makes you, show up it allows you to show up for everything else in your life as well a little bit better when you give yourself time to be, the leader that you can be. That translates to, showing up for your family better and, showing up for your employees better and showing up for your clients better, and people feel it. And I think, that's really what we're striving to do here.
No, that's great. That's great. Stephanie, are there key frameworks or filters you recommend for determining what deserves a CEO's, a C-suite executive, or owner's direct attention?
I think there's a couple things. First, again, just coming back to that working on the business piece. Nobody else in the organization, if it's a large organization, Fortune 500, if it's an entrepreneurial type company, with exponentially growing revenue, no one else can fill that leadership visionary role. And so you really have to think about that. I also like to think about, there's a whole matrix around activity and tasks and what you're looking at. And I find that the things leaders in any organization, the place they should be sitting is in that top right quadrant, which is that important but not urgent. That's when you're thinking about what's in front of you on your desk and your to-do list, anything that resides in that important but not urgent. If it's reaching out to a new prospect, if it's connecting with someone you met at a networking event, if it's doing those, if you're the one that does the employee reviews and helps engage your employees in your business and keeping that culture, that's always the important but not urgent quadrant. And that should always be the thing you start with, because that's the piece that no one else can do.
No, that's great. That's great. Yeah. And you mentioned those quadrants. Do you remember what that's called? Those 4 quadrants? I think there's a name for it. I've heard that in many different settings.
Yeah, there definitely is a name for it, and I definitely don't remember.
Well, I think by the time that we edit this and kind of get this out to everybody, we'll have some things there that'll be able to highlight what that is, maybe in picture form while we're talking.
Yes, absolutely. And it's the not important, urgent. That's kind of the fire piece, right? Or the urgent and important. That's also the fire piece, but that's oftentimes a delegation piece too, right? So Those are your left-hand quadrants, and then you've got the not urgent but important, and you've got the urgent and important. And so the right hand side of that matrix is really the side you should always be working in.
Sure. No, that makes sense. So Stephanie, can you share a few real world examples of how you've helped clients create margin in their schedules or clarity in their decision making, especially around high stakes financial, operational, and team related decisions?
I think the biggest thing for me, how I'm able to help my clients dig in, is really around asking questions. I think the answers people are looking for are already in their heart. They know what they should be doing and what they shouldn't be doing. So it's coming to that conclusion and prioritizing. So helping leaders by asking them questions. What do you think about this? What would the impact be? What are your goals? Let's go revisit those. Do the activities that are currently in front of you, or the tasks that you're going to do when we hang up, from this call, do they reflect your goals? Are they, when I say that, are they helping you achieve your end goal? At the end of the year, if we look back at everything you did and you say, wow, this was a really great year, what's the priority? And so by asking those questions, it really does help people filter what they should be doing. Someone said to me recently, and I really love it, if I followed you around all day today, I was just your shadow in the background. What I was observing, would those activities be supporting your end goal? Like if I came back to you at the end of the day and said, okay, I observed you doing these things, how many, or if any, would be supporting the goal you told me was so important? And I thought, wow, that really does reframe it, doesn't it? If somebody's holding you accountable.
You're asking that question. I feel embarrassed already without even about the things that I know I catch myself doing at times that just aren't useful for the time and day. As elementary as that sounds to ask good questions to create clarity. And it does sound like, of course I've got to ask questions and figure it out. But the reality is when you're in the thick of something, can you take yourself out of it, ask intentional questions, be willing to accept proper feedback to hear, right? I think somewhere in there, the ego's got a big curbing that has to happen in order for the humility to come out and the vulnerability for those questions to actually lead and direct where a leader should be most focusing their time.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I would say, if something that if somebody's listening to this and say, well, that was, that's so, I can't take this, away right now. So I don't have someone asking me those questions. I would say if you want something super concrete to say, as a listener, okay, I could take that away and do this today. I would say, if you have an employee that comes up to you with a particular problem, I would challenge you, instead of solving the problem, it's the old adage, teach someone to fish versus, teaching them to fish versus just giving them a fish is really important. So if someone comes up, if you have an employee come up to you and say, I have this problem, I don't know how to solve it. What do you think? Instead of solving it, send them back, have them reflect. What are the top 3 things they think maybe solve the problem? Like, whatever it is, I need 3 possible solutions to this problem you just brought. Come back to me whenever you have 3 options. And they come back, walk through those 3 options. You obviously want to have feedback on that, but ask them, okay, now what's your number one choice of these 3 potential solutions to whatever the problem was. And if it seems reasonable and logical, then, let them go execute that. But you're teaching them how to be problem solvers. And I also, as much as I believe in, we'll call it that open door policy, I think if you carve out very specific time in your calendar to address possible questions with your staff, then you help stop those constant interruptions through your day, which helps with those decision-making issues, the fatigue that we feel.
Sure. And I love how you brought in the fact that the employee is going to come up with the solutions because it just gives them more ownership. And it also kind of shows an honor to the fact that, no, this is like your position. I need you to help figure this out. So that can be flattering as well as honoring. And then, like you said, giving them the responsibility then to follow through on what they believe is actually going to work, which sounds like that would create a much more healthy team culture.
It does. And it comes down to trust, right? So you have to trust that they're bringing the best solutions and that they know what those solutions should be. And then you trust them to execute. So you do have to bring something of yourself to that situation, which can be incredibly difficult from time to time.
Yeah, I imagine that depending on the dynamic between the employee and the leader of whatever part of the organization they're dealing with, that could be really hard relationally because you might not jive with that person, right? So they're asking for vulnerability, they're asking for your insight, you're going to be subject to criticism. But if I would say that humility and vulnerability is allowed in that space, that can lead to great results.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think it comes back to hiring the right people, right? The skills and the cultural fit. I'm also a very big believer in personal accountability, extreme. So if something goes wrong, if I'm a leader and, there's a situation and the outcome just was not ideal, sometimes that can mean a little bit not ideal, and sometimes it can mean a lot not ideal, right? Is it the employee that had the problem, or is it the process? And who put the processes together? I mean, as a leader, you had some influence over them for sure. Maybe you created them soup to nuts, but for sure you had influence over the creation. And so where was the breakdown? Oftentimes it's the process. But so what role did I play as a leader in that breakdown? And it's and it could be the process. Maybe it was me not checking in to make sure that there was alignment throughout the course of the activity. So coming with that extreme accountability, and in my mind, there's no room for you statements, right? You are blame statements. Oh, you did this, you did that. No. We all have accountability here. Let's learn from this, but let's do it together.
No, that's great, Stephanie. That's a great response. Often the next level of growth isn't about the founder, it's about the team. What are some of the ways leaders can uncover untapped potential within their organizations?
I think one of them is what I just described, is really through that, hiring the right folks with the right cultural fit is super important. I always believe A players want to play with A players. So make sure that everybody is on the same page. Give them some boundaries and let them give them a freedom. So, we have employees that have, work with our suppliers around and our clients around budget for certain projects. And we have given our staff some boundaries. If there's some discrepancy on budget, if it's within this margin, you have full rights and ability to say yes. And if it's outside of the margin that we feel comfortable with from a budgetary standpoint, then come to us and we'll talk about it. But that is a level of trust and decision making, and that, that we've given our employees. And because of that, they feel heard and seen, and they have that buy-in of the project. And so, really pulling more out of your employees is a lot about putting the right employees in the right places. I also love, there are tools out there that will identify readiness. And so if you have written down everything that happens on a daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, yearly in your business, different tasks, activities, client facing, employee facing, whatever it is, you list them out, and you have every person on your team fill it out. I think I do this well. And I've been well trained. I think I might like doing this, but I don't have any training. I definitely don't like doing that, and I have no training, and I definitely don't like doing it, but it's a part of my job, so I do it. So those are kind of the 4 back to the quadrant idea. And have people fill that out, and you can look at it, and maybe it gives you an opportunity to shift some responsibilities to different people. So now they're doing things that they're really good at, that will, have a bigger and better impact on the overall experience for the company and the clients. I'm always about the filter of client facing. Is this better for the client? Is the client getting value out of whatever we're trying to implement or take away? Just because you've always done it that way doesn't mean you have to do it.
Right. So one of the things I think I heard you say there was tools are really important in the hiring process to determine and best figure out who you're hiring, right? Because they can tell you what they tell you. You hope it's all honest and upfront. Maybe there's some skeletons in the closet that they didn't want to talk about or bring up in that interview. But what happens when you hire someone? They went through all the tests, and everything tells you that you should actually be good at this and do it well. And you find that they're stuck. Maybe something's going on in their life that might be bleeding over into work. What kind of time frame do you give them? What kind of parameters do you set? Is it, hey, 90 days, if you don't get it, you're fired? Because that's a soft point, right? Because hiring someone is usually one of the most expensive things that employers do. It's one of the most valuable things, but it's also one of the most costly. It's especially costly if that individual is not working out, right? Because you've got to start that process then all over again. So how would you address that?
I do prescribe to hire slow, fire fast, and 90 days tends to be that sweet spot. I think it's really important to have check-ins. Like you can't just hire them and leave them to their own devices. Like you really have to have an onboarding process, and that really does help people succeed. You want them to be able to succeed. And you're absolutely right. There are things that happen at home that, you bring your whole self to the office. Nobody is exempt from that. And so having those conversations with, open conversations with your employees to say, hey, what's going on? Did your dog die? Like, I don't know, but we're here to support each other, and we can't support each other. You don't have to, the employee doesn't have to give all the dirty details, but they need to give you some insight into what's happening. And then you can make a better decision. If this is oh no, their dog really did die, let's give them a couple of weeks to get their head back in the game, or their head hasn't been in the game this whole time. They weren't honest with us about, well, mom is not doing well. I have to, I'm taking part of that care. You have to decide. But having the wrong person in the role for too long brings the whole team down, and you're not going to get the best out of everyone else also. And so you have to look at it from, not only are you kind to the person that maybe isn't a good fit because you're giving them an opportunity to find the right place for themselves, you also have to show support for your team And by having the wrong person in that role, you're not supporting the rest of your team. And they deserve that same level of support. So you really have to think about it. Just because you always have, because maybe it was a necessity to get you to where you are today.
Right. So when you're focusing on people, you're focusing on a team. So the team is really an organism, and you've got to take care of that organism or it's going to become infected, die off, whatever that looks like.